Something is brewing across the U.S. political landscape, and it could spell serious trouble for Donald Trump as a brand new wave of polling data is shaking the foundations of his approval ratings. Welcome to RNN News, where we break down the truth behind the headlines and right now. A new poll conducted in collaboration with Verite and Strength numbers shows that a growing number of Americans are expressing dissatisfaction with Trump, ways that cannot be ignored. This survey, conducted just before the explosive Epstein files story surfaced already, had devastating implications for Trump, as it showed that 57% of U.S. adults disapprove of his job performance, while only 42% approve, and these figures have barely shifted since June, suggesting a stubbornly negative perception that persists among the public. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, because when voters were asked to evaluate Trump on individual issues, the numbers got even worse. He's underwater on nearly every major policy front, from immigration to the economy to inflation. The only area where he still holds a slight edge is border security. But even there, his lead has shrunk from a 10-point advantage last month to just 4 points now. And when it comes to inflation, Trump's numbers hit rock bottom. Only 33% of Americans approve of his handling of prices. A staggering 61% disapprove, a net negative of almost 30 points, which is one of the lowest ratings any president has ever received on this issue. It's eerily similar to where Joe Biden was before the Democrats lost the 2024 election, and that context is important, because Biden's numbers were so bad at that time, he was forced to drop out of the race, and now Trump is seeing those same warning signs, flashing bright red. What's especially concerning is that inflation as an issue seems to transcend party lines. Voters appear to simply detest rising prices, no matter who's in the White House, and Trump's economic policies, like tariffs, are only making things worse by raising prices on everyday goods, like food and oils. His recently introduced legislation, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, has also landed with a thud and could further squeeze American wallets by reducing disposable income, all of which makes it likely that Trump's approval on this front will continue to sink. And that was all before Epstein controversy exploded into the national conversation. Since then, polling has revealed even deeper problems for Trump, with an astonishing 42-point gap on his handling of the Epstein files. Americans overwhelmingly demand transparency, with about 80% saying they want the files released, and when asked if they approve of Trump's performance on this issue, a mere 17% said yes, while a crushing 80% said no. That level of disapproval is almost unheard of. And while it hasn't yet caused a dramatic shift in top-line approval rating, is starting to chip away at the edges. Just last week, he was at 54% disapproval, and now it's up to 55%. And while that 1-point shift may seem small in the context of American politics, where most voters are locked into their opinions, even a 1 or 2 point change can be hugely significant, especially if it continues on a downward trajectory. Now, it's true that some voters can compartmentalize. They might disapprove of how Trump handles Epstein while still approving of him overall, but political analysts warn that erosion on specific issues often snowballs over time, and with Republican leaders like Mike Johnson now working to shut down House votes on the Epstein files, the issue isn't going away anytime soon. In fact, it may continue to frustrate GOP voters who are looking for answers and not getting them right now. About half of Republican voters say they disapprove of how Trump is handling Epstein, yet an overwhelming 90% still support him as president. But if the base grows more disillusioned and feels ignored, we could see that support soften. It's a matter of degrees. But if Epstein becomes a symbol of broken promises or political avoidance, even a small crack in the base could widen over time. As polling expert Elliot Morris put it, the trajectory is not good for Trump. And the deeper into the election cycle we get, the harder it becomes to reverse these. The broader political landscape is also shifting in ways that favor Democrats, according to the same Strength in numbers and Verite poll, when Americans were asked who they would vote for in their local House district if the election were held today. 47% said they would support a Democrat, while 43% backed a Republican. This 4-point Democratic lead might not sound massive on its own, but it mirrors the kind of advantage Democrats held in 2018 when they rode a blue wave to flip 41 seats and win one of the largest House majorities in recent memory. And that's not all. Another poll conducted by Atlas Intel, which was rated the most accurate pollster of the 2024 election, shows an even larger lead, with Democrats ahead by 8 points on a generic House ballot matchup. That's 51 to 43. And even though there are slight differences between these polls, the key is to average them together. As polling expert Elliot Morris suggests, when you do that, the Democratic lead sits around 6 points, which historically is a very strong position to be in at this point in the cycle. What's even more telling is how stable these numbers have remained over time, and with Trump's numbers trending downward, especially on high-impact issues like the economy, inflation, and the Epstein files Republicans could find themselves on the back foot going into 2026. The implications are huge, and not just for Trump but for the entire Republican Party. Now there's another fascinating development coming from this latest round of polling, and it involves none other than Elon Musk. The tech billionaire has made headlines by launching his America Party and vowing to support third-party candidates in local congressional races, particularly targeting Republicans who voted for the much-criticized One Big Beautiful Bill Act. So pollsters decided to test how Americans would respond to such a move, and the results were pretty revealing. They split the sample group in half, asking one group if they would support a generic third-party candidate, and the other group if they would support an America Party candidate backed by Elon Musk. 18% said they'd support a generic third party, but only 7% said they'd support the Musk candidate, a drop of more than 60%. This dramatic plunge shows that Americans are open to the idea of third-party alternatives when it becomes specific and attached to a polarizing figure, like Musk's support plummets. This isn't a new phenomenon. We've seen this story play out before with figures like Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz and Robert F. Kennedy, Jr., both of whom started out with significant buzz and polling momentum, only to fade as the election drew closer. In RFK's case, he eventually dropped out after polling at just 2%, despite starting near 20%, and this trend tells us something important about how American voters behave. Third-party support is often more emotional than practical and tends to decline as people begin to see these candidates as spoilers or distractions rather than viable alternatives to the two major parties. And while Musk might have the money and media reach, his brand doesn't appear strong enough to overcome that skepticism, at least for now. Finally, the poll also revealed one major opportunity that Democrats may not be exploiting to its full potential, and that is a growing concern among politically engaged Americans over judicial and constitutional overreach. After recent Supreme Court decisions and National Guard deployments into cities, many, especially those who closely follow the news, expressed alarm at what they see as a shift in power away from Congress and toward the executive branch. This is a topic that doesn't get much coverage but resonates with educated voters and those tuned in to constitutional norms. However, for the broader electorate, the number one issue remains the economy, and this is where Democrats have the most fertile ground to attack with. Trump's approval on inflation sitting at -30 and his economic agenda widely viewed as harmful. There's a golden opportunity to make the case that the GOP has no real answers for working class Americans, and if they play their cards right, this could shape the outcome of the midterms and even the presidential race. What all of this data tells us is that the winds may be shifting despite the entrenched loyalties and the noise surrounding political narratives. Numbers don't lie, and right now, those numbers are not in Trump's favor. For more sharp analysis on the numbers that matter and the trends shaping our future, stay with us here at RNN News. And if you found this breakdown helpful and eye-opening, be sure to like and subscribe for more straight talk and deep dives into the truth behind the headlines.